Hey yo, proverbial boy, back at you with yet another video, this time from San Francisco Free Tour, September 2019. And in this one, I'm gonna explore a couple of ideas. The first being why it's so important that you understand and learn charisma. You learn how to express yourself without inner entanglements. And I tell a couple of stories about friends of mine and stories from my own life where we use these abilities, this improved ability to express ourselves and engage with other people and communicate with clarity and power to open doors in our lives and really move up to the next level and the next chapter in our lives. And again, really make some very, very significant improvements in our day-to-day existence in our lives going forward. So that's number one. Number two, I'm going to explore and talk about the so-called human energy system. Now, this is something you might have heard me talk about before in these videos, but here I kind of give you an overview of that system. Now, when I say that phrase, human energy system, what I'm talking about is all of the different modes and sort of parts of yourself internally and externally that are interacting as you communicate to form your total instrument, your total communicative whole. And these are again, from the external projected modes of the voice, the face, and the body, to the internal guidance modes of the intellect, the inner emotional process, the intuitive process, the higher observer, etc., etc. And again, it's a pretty complex system, but understanding how all of these parts interact as you're trying to communicate and the different entanglements that can arise gives you the base understanding to start to work on releasing those entanglements and again, releasing and replacing their manifestations in your lives. So before we get into the video, like, subscribe, all that, but most importantly, click on that link below and go to charismamastery.com to get on board with this stuff and start changing your life today. One of the biggest things, and this is huge, and this is going to sound like I'm just kind of pumping you to sign up for shit, but this is a huge thing for me. Get that sentence, I can't afford it, out of your mentality. Eradicate that from your lexicon. For me, I learned this in my late 20s. So it's kind of an interesting thing. So I live in a house with a bunch of younger people. So I'm not there with a bunch of old people who just want to sit there and watch TV. I have a 23, 24-year-old and another 24-year-old girl that live with me. And these girls, they're fucking poor. They work retail and shit. And I'm like, dude, what are you guys doing? It's like that Louis C.K. thing. He's like, I have an 11-year-old and a 4-year-old. We can only do shit that the 4-year-old can do. Right? We can't go swimming because the 4-year-old can't swim. It's like, we can't go here because the poor people can't go. So I was like, dude, just make more money. They're like, easy for you to say, Jeff. It's like, how the fuck do you think I got where I am? If I had a problem that required me to have money and I didn't have enough money, rather than say I can't do that, I'm like, let's make more fucking money. And again, I get it. Back when I was in my early 20s, that was well, easy for you to say, guy who's older and has money. It's like, no, dude, get out of that poor person mediocrity mentality. This will be one of the most dramatic personal shifts that you can make in your own mentality. Figure out a way. You are all very resourceful people in here. The vast majority of you. I'm sure there's a couple, who are below the curve or whatever, but, that's fine too. It's fine too. You can still lead a fulfilling life. But sorry, that's kind of mean, but you know what I mean. So again, shift it. And by the way, on that note, Julian, he talked about, yesterday, I was here, he talked about how he made that decision to move from Switzerland to Los Angeles with no money, no house, no car, in an attempt to become Tyler's assistant. And he lied to Tyler. He's like, I have a car, of course. He bought some shitty car. He figured out a way to do it. He stayed in some roach-infested flat, right? And that decision started him on his entire life trajectory to this point of where he is now. So on that note, I'd like to kind of take the opportunity to put out the word here that I have a spot that just opened up for an instructor assistant. Because my buddy Bradley, he just quit. No. Don't feel bad for Brad. I'll tell you why. So Bradley is an interesting fellow. This guy's, I do love him. He's 28. He was 28 years old when he signed up. I think he's 29 now, or maybe he's turning 30 next month. He's 29 or 28 when he signed up. And I met him, in fact, actually a year ago, right outside of this room, right out there. And he came up to me and he told me his story, and this was his story. He had just broken up with his girlfriend of 3 years, and they, by all accounts, this was a wonderful woman that he would have been very, very happy being with. Why did he break up with her? He still felt that this was an area of his life that he hadn't mastered. And he felt that if he got with her, there would always be that lingering thing in the back of his mind, like, I'm staying with her out of codependency, or like I'm afraid if we were to break up. The same thing that I was talking about with that 4-year relationship. So as much as he loved her, and I believe this is a good guy. He's not some like creep, a little bit of a creep, but not a little bit, but he's overall a very kind-hearted guy. He did that for her because he knew if he didn't honor himself first, he wouldn't be able to commit fully to the relationship. So he broke up with her. He decided he was going to try to become my assistant and travel around me. So he traveled around me for the past year and improved a great deal. Now here's the interesting part. So a couple months ago, he was out here in town, and he was at an industry event for his, he works in sales. At the event, he was talking to girls. So this guy that works for a different company saw him doing this and approached him and said, holy shit, I've never seen anything like that. He's like, I know a lot of guys in sales, and none of them can do what you just did, what I just saw you do. He's like, you know what? I want to give you a job. I'll tell you what, let's set up an interview. So he set up an interview with this guy, and the guy hired him on with a raise of $125,000 a year. He's not making 120. He's already making 100 because he lives here, right? Now he's making like close to $250,000 a year. Why? Because he was my assistant. No, that's what he said to me. So, no, that's literally what and if he was here, he would tell you this. He said he directly attributes it to having worked with me. So, and he told me the next week, he's like, I got to quit. I'm like, why? He's like, because you taught me too well. I was like, fuck you, dude. He's like, yeah, this is going to be my last program with you. He's actually helping out in town through the end of the year, but he can't travel anymore because he got the new job. So I'm like very happy for him, obviously. I'm like, damn, Brad, good for you, bro. But point being, again, this could open up like different doors for you. By doing this, hopefully I can come to a better understanding and knowledge of myself by teaching this stuff. Every student, no matter their skill level, every interaction, no matter the outcome of the interaction, becomes an opportunity for fulfilling that purpose. Now, to achieve that purpose, we need to examine the ideas of emotional vibe, reliable vocal projection, how to tap into creative imagination, and furthermore, mastery of the nonverbal modes of your body's communicative system. All right? So again, the ability to project energy can be thought of as charisma. Now with charisma, most people have thought in the past what? This is either something you have or you don't. Like it's a God-given thing. It's kind of this mystical element. But if you think of it as the ability to project energy, whether that's a high output of physical energy or some kind of psychic energy, then we can simply examine what are the obstacles blocking that energy. Remove the obstacles, increase the flow of energy. So again, identify the obstacles, separate them, exercise them separately, reintegrate them into a more completely realized whole. So what I want to talk about here is kind of getting into one thing that I found is charisma and communicative skills. Like I said earlier, there really hasn't been a clear vocabulary for discussing the issues surrounding these techniques, right? Anyone here read books on charisma? What are some books? Dale Carnegie, the old school classic. It's good shit. That one's actually pretty good. I'd say the vast majority of them are pretty bullshit, right? They're very hokey. They're very surface level. They're like, look people in the eye when you shake their hand. Make sure the web of your thumb touches the web of their thumb when you shake their hand. There's a couple of good ones. One that really stuck out to me was Charisma Myth. That's a recent one that's okay. Olivia Fox-Cabane. But most of them are super hokey, and you can tell that it's not grounded in reality. Like these people, it's very theoretical. They certainly haven't been going out for 16 years teaching this shit, right? And even with experienced coaches, a lot of times the feedback is very vague. For example, you would say like, you seem a little stifled. Be more expressive. Show more vulnerability. This, that, the next thing. Like this doesn't really tell a guy what actionable steps to take. So again, I wanted to get very, very specific and provide clear definitions so we know exactly what we're talking about when we voice these criticisms or descriptions of your behavior to open the ability for you to actually make progress, okay? So the first thing I want to posit to you is this idea. People as communicating beings, we have 5 senses with which we engage with the world. What are the 5 senses? Seeing, touching, hearing, smelling, tasting. We only communicate with the first 3. Hopefully. Okay? You're not like, taste me. Please taste me tonight. Okay? Hopefully you're not communicating with smell, although you would be shocked. Their breath smells like they've been chewing on assholes. Diarrhea assholes. Shocking, quite shocking, that these people will spend, a couple G's to come on this program, yet they can't buy a fucking thing of dental floss. It's like, brush your fucking teeth, okay? And then smell, hopefully, unless you're like crop dusting people in the club or something. But again, so that leaves us with the first three, which are what? Again, sight, hearing, touch. So the corresponding projective modes are speaking, projecting mental and emotional messages facially, and then gesturing and touching with our bodies and moving around with our bodies. So again, one way to call this, in fact, basically here, so we've got the vocal mode, kinesthetic mode, and then the facial emotional complex that projects emotional messages. Okay, sight, touch, hearing. Okay, I want this thing to fall over. So the corresponding perceptual modes are then hearing, seeing, and feeling. So again, these three projective modes here form a system by which you communicate what you're trying to say. The perceptual modes by which you comprehend what others are saying to you, that forms a system as well. And then the interrelationship of these two systems also forms an overarching system. Okay? So all sensory communication is based on some relationship of these three perceptual and projective modes. So any art involving human communication is going to benefit from knowing how the communicating power of each mode can be enhanced. So beyond, where's my little stick here? Beyond the external projective modes, we then have the internal guidance modes. And the first of these is your intellect. So what does your intellect do as you're interacting with people? Picks up information. It observes. It processes. It analyzes. It remembers. It imagines. It chooses actions to take. What can it also do? That fucks you up. It can judge. It can judge you. Again, the greatest impedance, I guess, or the greatest obstacle to you actually being able to go out and take action is the intellectual mode interfering through judgmental processes. Now look, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater here. Judgment can be good, but you got to understand there's a difference between discernment and judgment. You have to discern, right? Because you have to decide proactively what creative choices to make as you interact with people. However, judgment, especially in process, is not useful. Judgment after the fact can be useful, because like I said, you want to be smart about your growth. You don't just want to go out and flail. It was a good night, it was a bad night, and not think about it. But again, it's for after. Analysis is for after, right? By the way, judgment, intellect is always relating to the past or future. Always. If you're completely present, intellect is transcended. So, like I said, this can be positive or negative. It's not a villain, but you need to understand that. So through exercise, we can actually increase the time that your intellect spends in useful activity, as opposed to counterproductive activity of judgment. So beyond that, excuse me, think of it like this. Obviously, in a seminar setting like this, where we're discussing and explaining these concepts, we're using the intellectual mode, right? So it's kind of a weird thing, because we have to employ the intellect to transcend itself, if that makes sense. So, like I said, any complex system like this, it needs to be analyzed in order to know it, right? But life works in wholes, not parts. So we need to understand how to synthesize this system into one solid thing where it's more effective, okay? A functioning whole. Okay, so then beyond that, we have this, the internal emotional process. This is distinct from your intellect. Anyone here read a book called Emotions Revealed by Paul Ekman? Yeah, good book. It's a pretty good one. Very succinct. This guy was probably one of the most respected researchers into human emotions. This guy traveled around. He went to
different tribes that had not had contact with civilization and examined how they experienced emotion, and basically discovered that the way that we experience and express emotion is generally universal, right? Transcends culture, transcends different teachings and stuff like that. So another guy was, what's this guy's name? Joseph Ledoux. He was another guy, another pretty famous emotional researcher. And basically, what these guys found out is that emotions happen before the brain has time to register what is even causing the reaction. Okay? So for example, let's say that you're driving, your vehicle, and you're driving along, and all of a sudden a child runs into the road. What's your immediate reaction? Step on the gas, run his ass down. Or the brake. Step on the fucking brake. Oh my God, there's a child in the road. Stop the fucking car. Okay? Now, if your brain had to process that, it would be ineffective. Oh, it appears as though a youth has entered the roadway. I believe it would be in both of our interests if I were to apply the brake at this time. Let me do that now. By the time that's happened, the kid's done. Right? So this is by necessity that this bypasses the cognitive process. Now, of course, this can cause a whole host of fucking problems, especially when you're going out trying to interact with people. Add human interaction, the volatility of that whole system into this mix, and it's not generally going to work out super great for you. So here's the thing with that. Anatomically, your emotional system can act independently of your intellect. Think about it like this. If the emotional mind creates anger, the intellect can judge it and maybe try to control it after. Now, beyond that, we have what we call the intuitive mode. Intuition. This provides insight to different things and situations without conscious reasoning or thinking. Okay? No conscious reasoning, no thinking required. And basically, intuition describes the specific nonverbal processes of these so-called mode minds. So for example, the vocal mode has its own intuitive mind. Like when I'm talking to you right now, I'm saying things, yes, I'm kind of working off notes, but generally, as I'm speaking right now, in process, I'm not planning these words as they're coming out of my mouth, am I? They're coming out of my mouth as I speak. Furthermore, the language, the musicality that I'm using to color the language, what does that refer to? The pitch, the inflection, the tone color I'm putting on it, the pauses that I'm choosing. Those are all being informed by the intuitive process. I'm not planning the tone color to put on each word in beforehand. And if I were to do that, it'd probably sound stilted and weird. So with that, you have to understand, this offers or informs these, but then the problem is, you got to understand, the energy system, it goes from in to out. So as it goes out here, as both of these happen and go out here, this will be like, okay, what is this saying? If I express these, could it be dangerous to me? How might these be dangerous for you to express here?
Tenderloin.
What does that mean? The tenderloin. Think about this. If I say this, it might sound foolish. If I say this, it might be silly. If I say this, it might be too aggressive. If I say this, it might be perceived as weak or vulnerable. So again, it interferes. It interferes with the mode mind. So we can't exercise this intuition process directly, but we can learn to open ourselves up to it more. Okay? So as the mental, intellectual mind tries to interfere with these other minds, it blocks their operation. It interferes. It blocks the flow of communication. And what happens is it reduces the range of their communication. And this is why you see guys who are, quote, stifled. This is what's happening when you're stifled. So at the same time, as I said before, we do have to employ the intellectual mind in the task of transcending itself, right? So beyond that, you've got this HOB, the higher observer. And this is sort of a kind of a part of your mind that sees things from a more objective perspective, right? Kind of blends analysis and synthesis. So think about it like this. Emotional process creates anger. Intellectual mind feels guilt for feeling it. So the higher observer can actually then step in to help the intellect to see that anger as merely energy that could be released in a variety of different ways, more useful ways, okay? The higher observer comes into play as a perception of your intellect, but it is not the intellect. So what it does is it kind of observes the other processes with a sort of detached interest. And beyond that, all of these other energies, and now we're getting kind of like, again, once we get past here, these are kind of more subtle, almost, I guess you might call them woo-woo type energies, right? So here is kind of like anyone in here familiar with Reiki energy therapy? You know, they might call it radiance or the, chi or universal energy, et cetera, et cetera. Basically, a whole energy that's greater than the sum. Now, with this stuff, look, I'm not by any means like some enlightened guy up here trying to talk educatedly about this, but again, this stuff definitely exists on some level. You know, through Einstein, quantum physics, we know that all matter is simply energy in different states of vibration, right? So a rock, a sunbeam, these are all on the same continuum of energy. So again, you're not your body, ultimately. You're not your thoughts. You're not the roles you play in your life. You're not your relationships, okay? The real you is this sort of radiant whole. But again, I'm not so arrogant as to believe that I have an answer to that. So here we see the whole system. So here you have in and out for the projective modes, and then here you have in and out for the whole system. So what I want to do in this next program, basically, we get into this for a period of like 10 to 16 hours with exercise processes that allow you to isolate all of these different modes, enhance them, and then, as I said, put them back together in a more completely realized whole. And by the way, how to speak to all of the issues surrounding this interrelationship between, intuitive and intellectual resources is arguably the most fundamental challenge facing anyone attempting to improve their communication skills. Right? That's the task here. And when we're discussing these three modes, understand every one of you in this room right now has a dominant projective mode. Right? Some are what do you think my dominant mode is? Vocal. It's vocal. I'm vocal. I learn better when I hear things. I talk myself through problems. If I'm bored and I have nothing to do, I'll just walk around like singing little songs to myself and talking to the dog. I'm just very vocal. Bradley, he's a very kinesthetic learner. Some people are just extremely kinesthetic. Other people learn through seeing, et cetera, et cetera. So you'll often learn best with your dominant mode as well. It'll be the same one where you learn and perceive. So understand as well, people that you interact with, they respond to different modes as well. So you don't really have the luxury or the option of labeling your audience dumb because they're not resonating with your communication style. So it would behoove you to improve all of these to the best degree that you can. Really, like I said, I really wanted to get down to the root of what's going on when we're communicating, right? What's going on internally? How are all of these processes interacting with each other and maybe entangled with each other and stifling each other, et cetera, et cetera. So again, understand, if you don't have complete control over this, if you understand that you have these entanglements, entanglement is the human condition. Judgment is the human condition. Right? Negative social conditioning is an unfortunate aspect of our human condition. Don't feel shame about it. Don't feel guilt about it, because that's just perpetuating the cycle of judgment. Right? Just have an awareness. Start to become aware of these entanglements. Start to become aware of these tensions you're holding. Start to become aware of these internal processes that may be detrimental, that might be useful. Start to become aware of how the system operates. And then just release the tensions, develop an awareness, let it go, work on it in process. This program is designed to give you a process to open and sustain charismatic expression with increasing consistency. Remove the obstacles, isolate the skills, exercise them separately, then put them together in a more completely realized whole. How to speak to all the issues surrounding this interrelationship between intuitive and intellectual resources is arguably the most fundamental challenge facing anyone who's attempting to improve their communication skills.
if you're looking to develop general charisma that you can apply across all areas of life, definitely check out Jeff's Charisma Master.